Real people, real opinions.
Real Talk Radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.
Ireland's classic hits.
I want to ask you, do you believe in God? Because I think that's a good question. It's kind of philosophical one, isn't it? Do you believe in God? Because if you believe in God, you believe in life after death, you believe in all that stuff that goes with it. So, do you believe in a God? By the way, he doesn't have to be the Catholic one. You know, he can be the Muslim one, he can be the Jewish one, he can be the Church of England one, he can be whatever one you want. Well, they're all the same. He can be whatever one you want. Do you believe in a God, a higher power of some description, responsible for your destiny? The number is 087 188 0008. That's 087 188 0008. Do you believe in a God? Let's do a little survey. I love surveys and polls. So I want you to WhatsApp or text right now, a yes or a no. Do you believe in a God? Yes or no to 087 188 0008. He can be the traditional guy up in the clouds with the beard, or a girl, whatever you think yourself. Or he can be Allah, or he can be anybody. I don't know. Or whoever the God happens to be that you believe in, I'd like to hear about it. I'm not going to disrespect your God. I don't believe in a God, but I'm not going to disrespect your belief in God. I don't have to respect your beliefs, but I can respect you and your belief, if you know what I mean. Anyway, that sounds confusing. Let me go to Tom. Tom, you are on Ireland's Classic Hits Radio. How you doing, Tom?
Hello, sir. How are you?
How you doing, Tom? Tom, do you believe in God?
I'm pretty good. I'm afraid not.
Okay.
I've lost it quite a while ago.
Don't apologise. You almost sound like you're apologising for not believing in God.
Well, no, I'm not. I suppose about 15 years ago, I discovered people like Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris.
Christopher was amazing, wasn't he? I mean, he came to a very sad death, sadly, with cancer. But he was amazing. You know, I have to say, I listened to him a lot. Richard Dawkins, I've listened to him quite a lot as well. But I actually thought Christopher was such a wonderful man with words.
Absolutely amazing, and it made me think for the first time about that particular subject, because all my life I never questioned it. Everybody went to mass where I grew up. Everybody believed, or at least said they believed. But then I started questioning it, and I thought, if you ask yourself 3 or 4 basic questions, it falls apart immediately. There's absolutely no valid evidence to support believing in it, and there's none whatsoever.
But that's what they call blind faith, isn't it? You have to have faith to believe in God.
Absolutely. But tell me one thing you cannot believe using faith. There's nothing you cannot believe using faith. You can believe absolutely anything, and it's not a path to any kind of truth. It's just a way of making... It's not a virtue either. It's absolutely gullibility as far as I can see.
Yeah, see, I'm a bit like you. I'm a gold standard guy. You know, in other words, if I have to believe somebody or something, I have to see the evidence to back it up before I believe it.
Absolutely. And all the religions that we've made up, which all of them are made up, they're all man-made. And the 10,000 plus gods that we've invented over the last 3,000 or 4,000 years, they're all made up. And there's absolutely no reason whatsoever to believe in the one that you've been indoctrinated to believe rather than the other 10,000 gods. I mean...
Depends on where you were born, really, doesn't it?
So,
it depends on where you're born, yeah. Yeah, but here's the thing. Richard Dawkins once said that he wouldn't... Now, I was surprised to hear him say this, but he said, I think he was maybe somewhat being sarcastic, but he did say he wouldn't rule out the existence of a God. Because you can't honestly say it doesn't exist either.
Absolutely, but look at it this way. You can't rule out the existence of Puff the Magic Dragon, or you can't rule out the existence
Spider-Man.
of the Easter Bunny. Spider-Man, I saw movies about Spider-Man. That makes him more believable than any god, you know?
Yeah, well, so, in fairness to Marvel movies, they do make it believable, in fairness, you know?
If something is unfalsifiable, I mean, that's a massive hole in it straight away. If you have to believe in it based on no evidence, and you can't falsify it, I mean, that's just a ridiculous proposition. And I think nobody with a functioning brain should even consider it. But you cannot underestimate the power of indoctrination. And unfortunately, our church and our state are still doing it. And it's I consider it child abuse. You know.
Well, Stephen Hawking, who was supposedly the most intelligent man in the world, did once say that anybody who believed in God lacked intelligence. Now, I think that would be patronising and unfair to people, because I know very intelligent people who believe in God too. Mind you, I find it difficult. I remember going back about 5 years ago, I was talking about this, and a guy came on who was a UCD professor, and he was a professor of theology, and he believed in God. And
theology.
Yeah, but
He could tell you how many angels dance on a pinhead.
yeah. But he was
But
a really,
whatever kind
no,
of
he was a really nice guy, and he was extremely intelligent. You know, he was a tutor and everything else. But then I said to him, I said, do you really believe that Moses, or not Moses, the other lad, Noah, and his family built an ark for 1.7 million land-faring animals, and and looked after them for 40 days and 40 nights? And he said yes. And I said, and I find that mind-blowing that somebody could believe that.
And Noah was over 900 years of age when he did it. I mean, these people didn't die at 30 years of age that you would expect them to die from simple illnesses 2,000 or thousands of years ago. These people lived to be 900 plus years of age. I mean... Let's be clear.
If Noah and his family were building an ark out of wood, wherever the part of the world they happen to be in, they'd still be here today with their Bronze Age tools trying to put it together. Yeah. I mean, there was only 4 of them, for God's sake. So realistically, it wasn't possible. But here's the thing I say, right? To be fair to Christians, it's a nice story. It has an origin.
It's a lovely, comforting story. Yeah?
Absolutely. And I watched a documentary one night as to where that story came from. And it was when the banks of the River Nile flooded, there was a pharaoh who built a raft to save his family and his oxen and his sheep. And the story probably just got exaggerated throughout the years or something like that. So, but I think that's how those stories come about. They get exaggerated. It's Chinese whispers.
Absolutely. I mean, we don't have a clue who wrote any of the Gospels. They are all anonymous. They've been translated, they've been interpreted, they've been retranslated, they've been edited, and then the Council of Nicosia decided what stories they're going to put into it. I mean, it's all made up. It's all absolutely made up. So people don't read it. That's the issue I have. And absolutely, when I started reading these guys, the next thing I did was to read the Bible, and I thought, oh my God, how can this be a good book?
No.
Where God commanded his chosen people to kill the Canaanites and the Midianites and all these. He says, kill the men, kill the women.
Well, different times, I suppose. In the original Old Testament as well, wasn't there a suggestion that if your daughter was raped, that, you should give the rapist, or the rapist gives you 50 shekels and marry her, sure, everything will be grand.
Marry her. I mean, how is that a good book? And how is that good book in any way?
But again, you have to take into consideration the times. People, we didn't live in a civilized society the same as we do now, although that's questionable by times. But stay there for a second, Tom. Let me go to James as well. James, you're on Ireland's Classic Hits Radio. How you doing, James?
Good evening, Niall. And good to talk to you again.
My favourite Christian in the whole world.
As distinct from the angry Christian.
As distinct from the angry Christian, yes.
He could be on yet now, Niall.
Oh, don't tempt him, please. I couldn't be dealing with that tonight. It's too warm. I'm in the studio here and the heat is overwhelming because the air conditioning is not working. Anyway.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, so, oh, Lord is right. James, you believe in God. By the way, James, are you surprised? Well, you're not surprised to see the drop in the census and people leaving the Catholic Church and leaving the fold. I mean, over the last 3 censuses, it's dropped by probably 35%. I mean, it's quite a lot, isn't it?
Well, I'm still quite happy with it now at 69%. And I think that 69% has been kept up by our recent arrivals now. Like the Polish people who are very devout Catholics now, and they're a very large part of the population now. Mm-hmm. And also the Filipino people who are very, very devout Catholics now.
Yeah.
And there's quite a number of them here now. We have them in my own neighbourhood. I have a Filipino family, and they're very devout Catholics now. Mm-hmm. And so they're helping to keep up the numbers.
Okay.
And of course, And,
well, talk to Tom there, because Tom, his argument is, how can you believe something that you actually can't see or prove?
Oh, there's a lot of mysteries in the world, Niall. The world is full of mysteries. Things that cannot be explained.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
You and Padraig now.
Yeah, me and Padraig. I'm one of the mysteries of the world.
We had Padraig last night. It was good to hear him again now.
It was. He was funny last night, in fairness to him.
Very modest man now.
Yeah. James, he is, by the way, he's a religious man too, by the way.
Oh, yes. I'm a big admirer of Padraig. Yeah. Straight talker now.
Yes.
And a very devout Christian.
Yep.
And a patriot.
Yeah, he is a patriot, all right. So James, convince me and convince Tom, because clearly we're both atheists. Convince me, like if you only met me for the first time and you wanted to convince me that God existed, how would you go about that?
No, I wouldn't even try now, because all I can say is that it was a gift given to me probably by my parents, and outside of my late wife and my parents, was the greatest gift that was ever given to me now. Mm. And it's been nothing but a huge help to me in my life, a huge comfort. And whatever happens when the day comes when I'll be going, which mightn't be far off now.
Would you stop at that, James? Don't say that to me. You worry me and you upset me when you say things like that.
When that day comes, I'll find out when I pass over. And if you're right now and there's nothing at all, except oblivion.
Yeah. You were going
then I can't be disappointed now.
Yeah, but you were going to say you'd come back and tell me, but you wouldn't be able to if there's nothing.
Well, one thing that worries me now, will I be able to hear the Niall Boylan show still over on the other side?
I'm sure we can get a podcast going up there.
That's if I go over and there's nothing now, I can't be disappointed. And if there is, well, then I was proved right. So one way or the other, I can't be disappointed now.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tom, sorry, would you not hedge your bets, Tom? Because, like, listening to James, who I've listened to for the last 12 years on this radio station, you know, he's a good man. He's a nice man. He's not. There's no.
I don't know about that now.
I don't know. There's no evil in his heart, you know, and like he's nothing to lose when he goes to the pearly gates. If they're there, well and good. He'll go in and he'll be happy, and they'll welcome him in with open arms. Whereas if me and you go, Tom, we're getting turned away, like with the guys with the white socks going into the nightclubs years ago. We're getting sent down to Beelzebub. So would you not hedge your bets, Tom? Oh Jesus, where's Tom gone? Tom, are you gone? He's died. He's gone to the pearly gates.
He's not gone already, now, is he?
Well, absolutely not, because that's actually called, that's Pascal's wager. He was a French. Am I here? Am I on?
Oh, you are, yeah. John!
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I tell you what I'm going to have to do. Do me a favour, both of you a second. Because, well, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pop you there onto that line. Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's far better. That's much better.
Okay, it's okay, John. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's actually what you just brought up there is Pascal's wager. Blaise Pascal was a French mathematician, and he thought, yeah, if you believe in God, you're better off, because if he's real, you'll be rewarded, and if he's not real, you have nothing to lose. But if you don't believe in him and he's real, you're screwed. And if you don't believe in him and he's not real, you've lost nothing. But that only works for one God. There are tens of thousands of them that have been put forward over the last 10,000 years, and absolutely none of them are real. So if you go to,
but you're saying they're not real. I'm saying they're not real. But to James, it's absolutely very real.
Absolutely, he said something interesting there. He said it was a gift from his parents. Yeah. So was the Easter. So was the Easter Bunny, and so was Santa Claus. Don't say that. No, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I know.
Both of them are supported by the same amount of evidence, which is absolutely zero. And I listen to you every night, and your caller there, I like him. He's great. He puts up a good argument.
He does.
But he does not need to be superstitious or to believe in a magic man to be good. And in fact, I would say that is a lesser form of morality. If you believe you're being watched the whole time and you do good things because a magic man in the sky is watching you and he'll reward you forever if you do the right thing, or you're doing the good thing because you don't want to go to hell, but the point is you're being watched, you're being supervised the whole time. But
hang on, Tom. Let me give you the counter argument to that, okay? From the day we're born, we're watched. We're watched by our parents to make sure we do the right things, because we're humans and we're not fallible. We make mistakes. We're not infallible. Sorry.
Absolutely.
So, in other words, hang on. The whole idea is when you live your life according to Christianity, yes, you believe you're being watched, but you're being watched to make sure you play by the rules, and the rules are you be a good person. Yes. You know what I mean? There's no harm in that, is there?
Doesn't that mean that our brains, 100 billion neurons inside our brain that give us our consciousness, that give us our ability to think, that give us our ability to reason, is pointless? I'm a moral person. I make moral decisions all the time. I always try and leave every situation a little bit better than I find it, and I will never set out to wrong or hurt or harm anybody. But I can do it for totally secular reasons. I don't need to be threatened with eternal damnation or eternal reward for doing the right or wrong thing. Okay. I don't need it.
Well, hang on, James. Is that a fair point? That you're being the reason you're a good person is because you're being watched.
I'm not going to convince anyone. Try to convince anyone else now. It's up to everyone to make up their own mind. But as I say, for me personally, it's been a wonderful gift. It's been a win-win situation for me. It's been. I can't say that I'm very glad I got it. And people of my age, like friends of mine, and maybe even younger, even people of your age who have the faith, all of them say the same thing. They never say, "Oh my God, I wish I never heard of that religion. I wish I never heard about God." They're all delighted now that they have had it in their lives, and it's enhanced their lives. It's been a great comfort to them, particularly when people pass on, and all the people I've loved now and my family are nearly all gone now. And it's a great source of comfort that I can still connect with them with prayer. That's a huge, huge comfort to me now.
But here's another point.
Go ahead,
if he was born in Afghanistan, he'd be praying to a completely different God. If he was born in India, he'd be a Hindu. If he was born in Thailand, he'd probably be a Buddhist. If he was born in the United States, he'd be one of 44,000 denominations of Protestants. I mean, these guys can't agree on they can agree on nothing. There's 44,000 denominations of Protestants in America. He's
Baptists,
a Roman Catholic. He's a Roman Catholic because culturally he was born in the Republic of Ireland, probably somewhere around the 1945 or 50. He had no choice. He was always going to be a Catholic. He was always going to be fed that story. It's cultural, and it's also historical. If he was born when the Greeks were in charge, he'd be praying to Zeus or Apollo or Poseidon. If he was around during the Roman Empire, he'd be praying to Venus or Mercury or Mars. If he was born when the Vikings were in charge, he'd be praying to the Norse gods, Thor or Odin. I mean, all these god beliefs are.
I'm a bit of a fan of Thor myself, in fairness. I do like the movies. Sorry, James. Well, hang on, Tom. Never respond to that. James, there's a lot of sense in that. You know, I mean, do you ever square that off in your mind that the only reason you're a Catholic or a Christian is because of the geographical location of your birth? I mean, no matter, that kind of then says to you, well, that doesn't make any sense then, does it? Because I believe in a particular God only because of where I'm born.
There are Catholics now here in Ireland. There are Catholics all over South America, from Venezuela to Brazil to Peru to Ecuador. There's Catholics all over the United States. There's Catholics in Estonia, Latvia.
Yeah, but primarily Ireland is a Catholic country, but primarily Saudi Arabia is Muslim. So what are Afghanistan? I mean, that's the point that he's making. But James, here's the thing, right? Do you read the Bible?
Oh, yes, on and off now. I wouldn't be an expert by any means.
Do you believe it? Do you believe all of it?
In and out of it now, I go in and out of it. But as I said, the only thing that depresses me today now, really depresses me, is the young falling away from it. And I can see it here in Ireland, the effect that's having on them. A lot of young people now are trying to access psychotherapists. I was reading the other day, children of 9 and 10, which is sad and shocking. 9 and 10 years old are self-harming now. They're suffering from anxiety, from panic attacks because of this awful world that we now live in, and they have nothing to turn to now. It's and they're being bombarded with information on their phones and the internet. Very glad to hear last night, actually, on your program that some schools now are going to ban the phones in primary school.
Well, it's the parents who have come together and decided to do that, which is a great experiment, by the way. But you're an intelligent man, James, and I've spoken to you many times, and I have great admiration for you, right, as a man. But it does puzzle me that such an intelligent man will read the Bible and believe the stories in the Bible. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're nice stories. Most of them have nice morals to them. And it is all about the morals of the story, I mean, realistically. But I'm assuming you don't believe, that one man and his family built a massive boat, probably the size of Ireland. I mean,
these are parables. You must interpret them your own way now. But what I was very pleased to read some time ago, I was reading a book about great lives and great deeds. So there were a whole combination of great people in the past that made great, impressions on the world. And one of them was Einstein. Of course, the father of science, I suppose, now. Yeah. And I was very glad to see that he also believed in a possibility of an afterlife.
Yeah, but James, people quote that all the time, and it's a really unfair thing to do because 99.999% of the population believed in God at that time. Otherwise, you were a heretic. So most people believed in God at that time because there were a lot of things, and throughout time, the belief in God was strong because we looked up at the sky, man, when he first stepped out of the caves, looked up at the sky and saw the sun and the moon, didn't know how that got there. watched the crops grow in the field, didn't know how that got there, no explanation for it. There was no science in those days, apart from a few people that were maybe a little bit cleverer than others. They didn't know how things worked. They didn't understand how fire began and how it kept them warm or why it kept them warm, why they got sick and why they got better again. They didn't understand. So they attributed things they didn't understand to God.
Niall, I was alive when Einstein was alive now.
I know.
He died in 1955.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is...
Very much the modern world now.
Yeah, but no, well, it wasn't the modern world, realistically, because if you go back 50 years ago in this country, nearly everybody believed in God.
Yes, but this is a man who, you know...
Look how far the world has advanced in the last 50 years.
This is a man with a giant intellect now.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. But the point is he lived in a time where nearly everybody believed in a religion.
Oh, not so much now. Not so much in the 1950s. They were questioning. You were talking about hundreds of years ago, yes, but not in the 1950s now. You had philosophers. Questioning the presence of the Lord. There was plenty of people to oppose him now.
How many people in Ireland didn't believe in God in the 1950s? Sure, our own constitution had to be sent off to Pope Pius to be signed off before that.
But there was a lot of countries where didn't believe in God in the 1950s. Now England wouldn't have been a God-fearing... our next door neighbour wouldn't have been a God-fearing country now.
Okay. Well, stay there for a second, because I want to bring Tony in. Tony, how you doing? You're in Ireland's Classic Hits Radio.
How you doing, Noel?
How you doing? Tony, are you surprised to see that so many people are kind of disappearing from the faith?
Not really, no. I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in God. But I am respectful of people who do.
Yep.
Like,
I think you have to be.
If I see a hearse go past me, say, I'll bless myself.
Yeah.
You know, out of respect.
Yeah, it's a traditional thing, isn't it?
Yeah. But, you know, these... how can I explain it? These, you know, but like the born-again Christians and the people that are avid about Jesus and he's going to rise again and what have you. Now, I do believe there was a good man back in the day.
Yep.
That done a lot of good. And he did do a lot of good, obviously, because he's talked about.
Probably.
And he's written about. But he's dead.
Well, I mean, there has been questions raised, and I don't want to disappoint people, or be it James or anybody else, but there has been questions raised about the existence of Jesus. Because, of course, the story of Jesus has been told many times before Jesus existed.
Yeah.
I mean, there were many gods. Even the Krishna god, by the way, was born on the 25th of December, had 12 apostles, died, came back 3 days later. That story was a pagan story. It's a really old story, and it was used every single time. So if this person existed, most likely all of that stuff about being born on Christmas Day, actually, historians believe that if he did exist, he may have been born closer to the summer. But anyway, that's beside the point. But there were 17 historians in that part of the Middle East at the time, and none of them make reference to a person called Jesus.
No, but see, I'm not educated on religion as such. I was actually christened Church of England. Obviously, I come from England. I was christened Church of England. My parents never practiced any kind of religion, nor did I. I never went to church. They read the Bible and they say, you know, God built the world in 6 days, built the world in 6 days, and rested on the 7th.
Well, everyone needs a rest, in fairness.
Jesus Christ, Murphy's couldn't build an house in a state and rest on the 7th day.
If he was Irish, he'd probably stop for a cup of tea and a biscuit. You know what I mean? But James, James. No, hang on. Just let me go back to James just for a second.
Each to their own, and I do respect every religion.
Absolutely. Well, I respect. I don't have to respect the religion, but I respect the people who believe in it. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, of course. Each to their own is what I say.
Yeah.
But when you get these born again Christians and these avid, you know, Catholics and what have you, and they preach to you in the street and Christ, go away. You know, go and believe what you want to believe, but don't preach to me about it.
Sorry, James, can I just ask you a question in relation to the historical aspect of the whole thing? And I kind of went down a rabbit hole, James, going back a few years ago, looking into the whole thing in relation to Jesus. And as I mentioned to you, I think there was 17 historians in that area of the Middle East at the time, and none of them make reference to a person called Jesus. That doesn't mean he didn't exist, by the way. But they made reference to, there was lots of prophets at the time, or people who stood up on hills preaching and were clever people. you know, and it's a possibility that Jesus did exist and he was a clever man and that's why he was written about by individuals. But I mean, there is question marks around it, James. Do you ever ponder over that the story of Jesus and the basic elements of that story, born of a virgin birth, died, came back 3 days later, was born the 25th of December, that story has been used time and time again, long before Jesus came along. So does that ever play in your mind, that part of the story?
When you're talking about Jesus, some historians would say now, why wouldn't a prophet be around in those days, preaching? And of course, crucifixion was a very common thing in those days. Now,
very common,
you know?
yeah.
Very common crucifixion. So the possibility of a man called Jesus preaching, you know, as he was, good things and love thy neighbour and all that. That was not beyond. The problem people have would be with the resurrection now. Not so much as if a man like Jesus existed, because there was prophets in those days, and people did get crucified if they crossed the wrong people or if they displeased the emperor. So,
well, if we were to believe in the resurrection, and again, as I said to you, there were other gods, many of them actually before that, pagan gods who also had the 3-day resurrection. But let's just say, for argument's sake, forget about them before, and let's say that story was real, right? For the purpose of the conversation, is it not possible that maybe, you know, somebody they thought was dead or was in a coma, come back to life 3 days later, and then for 2,000 years the story just gets exaggerated? Is that not just a possibility?
Well, even though I'm pretty old now, I wasn't around quite that back then. So I thought.
But I'm just saying the story.
There are people think that
I mean, the story is a little bit, you know, it's vague because we have this person who's born and then we hear nothing about them till they're a middle-aged man. It's a very vague story, isn't it?
Yes, of course. It's a long time ago now, and as I said, I wasn't there, so I just have to take the word.
You weren't? You mean you weren't there, James?
Yes.
Well, not if I died. I'd like to come back 3 days later.
Yeah. I'd like to wait a week, actually. I could do it a week off.
Yeah. As long as I died on the Thursday, I wouldn't have to go to work on the Friday. I would have a long weekend.
Stay there. Let me bring on John. Oh, I don't believe it. Is this John? Oh, God. John, hi. Hello, John.
How are you doing?
Oh no, it's not the same. It's a different John. Okay, sorry. I thought you were angry Christian John. You're not. John, how you doing? You're on Ireland's Classic Hits Radio. John, you believe in God?
I do, yeah.
Okay, and what makes you believe in God? If you're trying to convince somebody else who didn't believe in God to believe in God, what would you say to them?
Well, I can only go on my own story, and my own story is that I was born into a Catholic family and brought up in the Catholic Church, and when I would go to Mass on a Sunday, I would hear all this nice talk or whatever, but when I went home to my home house, it was chaos, and there was no love, and there was no peace, and it was fighting and arguing. And so for me, obviously I had to keep going because we were forced to go and all this stuff. But
yeah, I remember that.
Then I fell into addiction and gambling, drugs, drink, and so by the time I got to 28, I had to go into a treatment centre, and I got recovery. And in 2014, I was invited along to a Christian church, and I didn't really want to go because I was thinking this is the same old stuff again. But it wasn't. People were genuine. People hugged me. People would lift me at my house. I wasn't living near the church, and they would take me, and they were just genuine. After the first 6 months, I was like, "This is they're only doing this till they get me in, and then they're going to change." But it never really did change, and I've been going there ever since.
Wow!
And I believe that my life has transformed since 2014 to now. So that's 9 years, and I know that a lot of people hate God and all the rest. And
well, I don't think people hate God. I mean, I don't believe in God, but I don't hate your God.
Yeah. But I'm just saying a lot of people are angry, and they've every right to be angry with what happened in the Catholic Church with the.
But that's the church. That's not God. That's the organisation of the Catholic Church. You know, so that's not really. Yeah. They have no right to be angry with God.
Well, a lot of people are blaming God for that, but at the end of the day, God gave us all free will, and these priests chose to do it themselves. They weren't. It wasn't God's fault that they done it.
No. Well, if there is a God, no, it wasn't his fault, I'm assuming, although they say he's in control of everything.
Yeah, well, I can only go from my own experience now. I've had a great experience, and I've come through a lot in my own life, and I believe that God has been with me all through it.
And you know what? If that helped you, John, I'm happy. And if your belief in God helped you get through the worst time in your life, where you had the addictions and everything else, well, then it's a good thing. But that doesn't necessarily prove that God exists. It just means that at that time in your life, that faith or belief that you had in a God helped you. And that's a good thing, by the way. I don't want to take that away from you. But that still doesn't, that's not proof it exists.
Well, Niall, at the end of the day, nothing's going to prove it exists if somebody doesn't want to believe.
Mm.
So
but it takes a lot, doesn't it? It takes a lot to believe in something that you have no evidence for whatsoever. It does take a lot to believe in something like that, because you're relying purely on faith.
Well, that's what everybody done. Like Abraham in the Bible had to take his son up to be chopped up, and he had to have faith to believe that he went by faith and put his son up to be the only son he had. He waited 90 years to have him, and it takes faith. Like, well, none of us will know until it comes to the end. And if you're right, then you'll know that, and if I'm right, I'll know that. So there's no point in having arguments about it.
Oh, no, I don't argue with anybody. I just debate it. That's all. I just think the debate is interesting.
But now nobody will know till they get to the end.
And then you can never come back and tell us anyway. So we'll never know for sure. You know what I mean?
But I can see, like people say, go to Mass for 30 minutes on a Sunday is enough to have a relationship with God, but that's not a relationship with anybody. Now, if you had that relationship with your family 30 minutes a week, would you call that a relationship?
No, it's a full-time job having a relationship with God, I imagine.
Yes, a relationship that I would have would be reading the Bible and
do you believe? Let me ask you the same question I asked James. Do you believe the Bible literally?
I take it at face cover. Yeah, I believe that Jesus rose from the grave, and I believe I talk to Jesus every day, and I've seen people heal from different ailments. Even in the last week, those people who prayed.
Yeah, sorry, Tony. You want to say something to John there? Go ahead, Tony.
Sorry, yeah. Now, as I said earlier, I don't believe in God, but that's my own
thing.
trait.
Yeah.
But that man just said, he had a bad life. And he found God, and it helped him. And as I said, each to their own. If that helps that man, then fair enough.
Yeah.
I'd never knock a religion, and that's helped that man. He said he had addictions and everything else, and people helped him, and he believed in God, and that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And good luck to you, and well done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But here's the thing. When you say, John, that you believe, and I'm going to go back to what I talked to James about earlier on, that you believe the Bible literally, or you believe what's written in the Bible as the Word of God. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that it would take some amount of faith to believe. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's far-fetched.
I'm understanding what you're saying, yeah, but to be honest, Niall, I don't know if you've ever heard of the word, but it's called being born again of the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when people start to understand the Bible. For a worldly person to look at the Bible, it looks like chaos.
Well, it's like some supernatural film. You know what I mean? I mean, I know it's a different time. I get that, and you have to contextualize everything. But some of the stories are so far fetched and so unbelievable that the best fantasy film wouldn't be able to duplicate them. So what I'm saying to you is, it takes a lot of faith to believe something like that really happened. I'm not saying things didn't happen. And I go back to the story again of Noah and the ark, for example. I'm not saying that some man and his family didn't save animals during a flood. And I'm sure there were floods, by the way. There were a lot of floods because we've had ice ages. We've had all sorts of climate changes and disasters over the last, God knows, many million years in this world. But the point that, a man and his family, small family, would build an ark big enough for 1.2 million land-faring animals is so far-fetched and so removed from reality. It would take a lot of faith to believe something like that. Because there were Bronze Age tools they were using. They would have had to go down a whole forest to build an ark that size, and they'd be still building it today if they tried. So it does take a lot. For an intelligent man, John, and I'm assuming you're an intelligent man because you sound like one, to believe a story like that. I literally, I'm sure a story happened that may have been exaggerated throughout the years, but do you believe that story?
I do believe that story, but it's not because of. If I was looking at that,
That's fair enough. Let him
Well, no, hang on, Tony. Let him finish, please. Let him respond. Go ahead, John.
like at the end, if I was looking at that story as a book and reading a book, I would be saying that's very far fetched. But when you become a born again Christian, you become born again. This is hard for people to understand that don't know anything about Christianity, but you get a new spirit put inside you, and you get a water baptism. I know that's not for everybody, but I'm just saying what happened to me, and that helps you to understand more about what the Bible is about.
Yeah, sorry, Tony, you wanted to say something to John?
Yeah, but that helped you. That story, reading the Bible, because of what you went through, that helped you, didn't it?
Of course it did, yes. I
Of
wouldn't
course
be alive
it did,
today.
yes. And
Wouldn't
fair
be
play
alive
to you.
today.
And that's what I'm saying. You know, I'm not religious in the slightest, but I wouldn't disrespect anyone's religion or what they believe in. Now, if that story, reading the Bible, and that story helped you, then fair play to you and well done, is what I'm saying. You know, I don't believe it myself, but if that helped you, then that's what I'm saying about each to their own.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, guys, I have to go to a break. John, it's been lovely talking to you, by the way, John. And by the way, what's the story now, John? I'm assuming you're off the alcohol, and you've got a good life going now.
Yeah, thanks, Niall. I'm 16 years free now from alcohol gambling and drugs, yeah. And I've held down a job. I'm looking after 2 autistic people.
Wonderful.
And I do that from Monday to Friday, and I'm very into sports and gym and that. And yeah, I'm a new creation and I'm a new person.
Good. Well, I'm glad, and you sound like a good man. Listen, thank you very much indeed, John. Thanks for coming on the air. Appreciate it.
All right, Niall.
Bye.
Cheers.
Okay, keep texting, keep WhatsApping. The number's 087 188 0008. The census, they released some statistics today from the national census that you filled out last year. And one of those statistics, which kind of caught my eye for obvious reasons, is the belief in God. Well, not the belief in God. Religion. Religion is down substantially. More so than anything else, actually. And by the way, there was a survey done back, I think, in 2012. Now, it could have been a knock-on from all the reports that had been out about the Catholic Church at the time of the abuse. But Ireland had the highest drop across the world in a belief in any religion. There was a drop of like 50% at one stage across the world. It's no surprise, by the way, the southern states of America had the highest increase in religion because it was a worldwide survey. But this particular one is only about Ireland. This is the census. And there's been a drop. The average age of the population is 38.8, and the proportion of people identifying as Catholic has dropped from 79% to 69%. Now, some of that as well could also be due to the influx of people into Ireland, because, of course, Islam would have gone up because, obviously, the percentage of population believing in the Catholicism would have gone down in comparison to Islam, because that's now rising. Because you have people coming into the country from other countries who have other beliefs, Hinduism or whatever it happens to be. The numbers of Jewish people have actually gone down in Ireland, I believe. There was at one point about 5,000 or 6,000 Jewish people in Ireland. I think there's only about 2,000 now. It's actually really low. I didn't realise it was so low.
You're listening to Nighttime Talk with Niall Boylan.
With Recruit.ie. Download our job search app today. Search for Recruit.ie in your smartphone app store.
Ireland's classic hits radio.
Niall, I think you're being extremely disrespectful, according to one texter here, questioning the belief in Jesus Christ, the one true saviour. Well, he might be your saviour, and you might believe that, and that's fine, but not everybody believes that. Clearly, some percentage of the population don't believe he's a saviour. Somebody else says, Niall, why do you think the existence of God has been denied by so many people over the last 30 years? I think a lot of that's to do with the fact that I'm not suggesting if you believe in God, you're not intelligent, by the way. That's not what I'm going to try and say. But I think people's intelligence level and the access to information, where we didn't have that access, reduces the belief in God. Because when you don't understand something and you can't explain something, it's easy then just to attribute it to something or some sort of power or superpower or whatever it happens to be. But when you do understand it and you do have an understanding of how this thing happened or what it is or where this thing's existence, well, then you don't have to attribute it to anything. But let me go to Sarah Jane. Sarah, you're on Ireland's Classic Hits Radio. How you doing, Sarah?
I'm doing grand. How are you, Niall?
Good. I've got 2.5 minutes. Do you believe in God?
Who is God? Like, tell me who God is.
I've no idea.
Yeah, well, there you go. Do I believe in God? I think years ago, like, we all had the fear of God because, I don't know.
Well, you were told you were going to go to hell if you were bold, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, your hand will stick up in the grave if you tell a lie. Give me a look at your tongue, it's black, that's it. You know?
I remember that.
That's what my mother used to say to me. If I told a lie, or if I emotionally, I always had a bad habit of picking up fruit and vegetables and just walking away. And she used to always say, my hand is going to stick up the grave when I die.
Your hand will stick out of the grave when you die.
Yeah. I swear to God, like.
Yeah.
Right? And then not only this, and I'm not going to be rude saying this, right? We're all adults, and it's night time, right? I remember standing in the kitchen when I was around 14 years of age, and I was in the height of pain, right? And I was at the getting the periods, right?
Yeah.
And she said, you go on in there and say a little prayer to the Blessed Virgin Mary, right?
Right.
And I hadn't got a clue even how to say the prayer, right? But I hadn't got a clue what she meant by it. So when I was 27 years of age, I started laughing, and I said, man, I just have to say this to you. Do you not remember saying that to me? And she started saying, oh, it's a gift for a woman, like, to get her month.
I don't think most women would agree with you on that, but go on, yeah.
No, Niall, because I definitely don't agree with it. It's not a gift to me.
It's a gift.
It's not, of course. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hell. There you go. In other words, it's me. And I actually don't believe that, if for whichever way you want to put it, like, Mary didn't have sex to have a baby.
Yes.
But do I believe in a God? You had a man on speaking there about his alcoholism and his addiction, right?
Yeah.
Drink, drugs, and men I relied on for years through my addiction, right? And I can understand when I started into an AA program, you say there's an anti-prayer and the God Father, right? So I started getting some belief in a higher power that I chose to call God, right? So that was something outside myself, rather a drink, a drug, a man, a psychiatrist or a doctor that can get me well and make me clean, drug-free, total absence of alcoholism and drugs, right? So everything was going grand, totally believed in that, right? My mother died at 59 years of age, right? And I said to myself, what loving God would let something like that happen to my mother? Because my mother was an angel.
I know. I think people question that when you see good people dying young and you see evil people living for long lives. You often wonder what sort of God would create that.
Yeah, but now not only that as well. Human growth. You realise what's good and what's bad in life. You know what I mean? If you do the right things for the right reasons, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to feel right. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's God or a higher power that's giving you that lift and that spirit. You're actually doing that yourself. And yeah, I've got cliche as well about religion and spirituality. I went through all of that myself. You know what I mean?
And do you believe in any of it? Do you believe in any type of higher power whatsoever?
Right at the present time?
Yeah.
Oh.
No. Okay.
No.
Fair enough.
I can't honestly think. I think when you die, that's it. You're going to the worms. And I think hell is on earth, and so is heaven. So the way I look at it is, you make the best of life, you live happy, do what you want, stay safe and don't hurt anybody else and be kind to yourself. And if you're mean and ugly to people, you're living in hell on earth. That's the bottom line.
But I have to say, that's not a bad mantra to live by, Sarah. Listen, I've run out of time. That's not a bad mantra to live by. While you're here, enjoy it and be good and be kind.
Real people, real opinions.
Real Talk Radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.